In a quiet corner of Milan, on May 3, 1991, a boy was born who would one day be called the patron saint of the internet. His name? Carlo Acutis. The only child of Antonia Salzano and Andrea Acutis, Carlo was, from the very beginning, different. At just 3 months old, he surprised his parents by uttering his first words, a rare feat. By 5 months, he could form short sentences, and as he began to walk, so too did his mind begin to run ahead of his years. While other toddlers were content with cartoons and toys, Carlo would greet everyone he passed on the street. He radiated an inner joy, a social warmth that couldn't be taught. But the most remarkable trait of young Carlo was not his intellect, it was his profound spiritual sensitivity. From the age of 4, he showed a deep fascination with Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary. When his mother would take him for a walk, Carlo would tug her toward the nearest church. He loved to sit quietly before the tabernacle, blowing kisses to the crucifix and offering hand-picked flowers to statues of Mary. This affection for the divine puzzled his parents, who were culturally Catholic but had long since stopped practicing. Antonia, deeply moved by her son's devotion, felt called to return to the church. Inspired by Carlo, she began attending Mass again, eventually becoming a catechist. The boy had unknowingly evangelized his own mother before he was even old enough to tie his shoes. At age 6, Carlo would accompany her to catechism classes, absorbing every word like a sponge. Parish priests and catechists soon took notice. This boy, they said, was different. One priest, sensing something extraordinary, asked Carlo to begin preparations for First Holy Communion, even though he was only 6. By age 7, Carlo had received the Eucharist, and with it, his daily practice of attending Mass and praying the Rosary began. These habits would remain unbroken for the rest of his short life. As Carlo grew, so did his curiosity and skills. He enrolled in a competitive Jesuit high school in Milan, where he excelled academically and socially. Carlo was not only intelligent, but also kind, funny, and generous, a rare combination. His classmates were never jealous of him because he always made others feel seen and valued. He made everyone laugh. He helped anyone struggling. He had that magnetic quality of humility that made even the most cynical teacher take a second look. By age 9, Carlo had discovered another passion, technology. He was fascinated by computers, coding, animation, and video editing. His mother recalls buying him university-level programming books that most adults would struggle to understand. Yet Carlo taught himself. He learned how to build websites, design games, and even created his own animations for fun. But Carlo didn't use these talents to chase money or fame. He saw them as tools for evangelization. Even at a young age, he understood the power of media to shape hearts and minds. While other children used the internet to escape, Carlo used it to invite. Despite his talents and popularity, Carlo was also strikingly self-aware. He knew his weaknesses. He sometimes talked too much in class or overindulged in food. But unlike most kids his age, he actually did something about it. He went to confession frequently. He kept a journal where he wrote down his daily struggles and reflected on how to become better. "What does it matter?" he once wrote. "If you can win 1,000 battles but not conquer yourself." That quote reveals something essential about Carlo. He believed in the interior life. He believed that holiness was about daily effort, self-discipline, and love. In those same years, he began helping his mother deliver food and blankets to the homeless. He would round up his school friends to volunteer at the parish. He took what he learned in catechism and passed it on to younger kids, volunteering as a helper in religious education classes. When he was 11, he received the sacrament of confirmation and renewed his commitment to Christ. He was becoming more than just a good Catholic boy. He was becoming a young apostle. Carlo's friendships also reflected his growing spirituality. Though he was loved by his peers, he was never drawn into gossip, bullying, or peer pressure. He had a natural instinct to protect the vulnerable. There are stories of Carlo befriending kids who were often left out. One classmate recalled how Carlo invited him to his house for lunch every week after noticing he always ate alone. His awareness of suffering extended beyond his age. Carlo had a way of seeing pain in people even when they tried to hide it. He would gently reach out, ask how they were, and pray for them. He never imposed his faith, he simply lived it so clearly that others wanted to understand why he was so different. Carlo's love for the Eucharist deepened as he entered his teenage years. He would say, over and over again, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." He couldn't understand why so many Catholics were lukewarm about Mass. He once said, if people understood the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, they would fall on their knees in awe. This heartbreak sparked a mission. Carlo began researching Eucharistic miracles, documented events where the host had visibly turned into flesh or bled real blood. He was stunned by what he found. These miracles weren't fairy tales. They were real events, validated by church authorities, some dating back centuries, others as recent as a few decades ago. At just 14, Carlo decided to use his tech skills to build a website documenting all the known Eucharistic miracles. He contacted scientists, priests, and church archives. He traveled with his family to visit many of the actual sites, photographing the relics and artifacts. The result? A massive online project, The Eucharistic Miracles of the World, available in multiple languages and downloaded across continents. Carlo wanted every Catholic, especially the youth, to rediscover the treasure sitting silently in every tabernacle. The more Eucharist we receive, he wrote, the more we become like Jesus. This was no empty slogan for him. Carlo lived what he preached. He was known to spend hours in Eucharistic adoration. He would often walk to Mass when his parents were busy. He prayed the rosary daily and fasted regularly for the intentions of others. Carlo also began speaking at schools, parishes, and youth events about the power of the sacraments. Though still a teenager, he spoke with clarity and confidence. He didn't try to be a preacher. He simply shared how the sacraments changed his life and others listened. By the time he was 15, his website had drawn tens of thousands of views. Some dioceses even turned his online exhibit into a traveling physical exhibition. What began as one teenager's project had become a global apostolate. And all the while, Carlo remained Carlo. He still played soccer. He still teased his friends. He still loved pizza and Nutella. His sanctity wasn't in being removed from the world, it was in being deeply present in it, while still radiating God. In the fall of 2006, Carlo began feeling unwell. His classmates thought it was just the flu, and so did he. But his condition worsened quickly. After medical tests, the doctors delivered devastating news. Carlo had an aggressive form of leukemia. Within days, his body began to fail him, but not his spirit. He smiled through the pain. He prayed more, not less. He refused to wallow in self-pity. Instead, he offered up every ounce of suffering for the Pope and the Church. He comforted the nurses and doctors. He reassured his parents. "I'm not coming out of this hospital," he said quietly to his mother, "but I will give you signs that I'm with God." On October 12, 2006, just 1 week after his diagnosis, Carlo Acutis died peacefully, smiling. His funeral was unlike any other. The church overflowed with people, classmates, homeless people he had helped, parishioners, and strangers who had heard of his holiness. Many stood outside in the street. They came not to mourn, but to give thanks. Almost immediately, stories of his intercession began to circulate. People claimed healings, conversions, and renewed faith after praying to him. His mother received letters from all over the world. And then came the miracle. In Brazil, a young boy born with a rare pancreatic disease was healed after his family prayed to Carlo. The Vatican investigated. Doctors testified. The case was approved. In October 2020, Carlo Acutis was beatified in Assisi, the birthplace of his favorite saint, Francis. His incorrupt body now lies in a glass tomb for veneration. Blessed Carlo Acutis, a boy who loved computers, a boy who loved Jesus more, a boy who became a light for millions. He once said, "Our aim must be the infinite, not the finite." Heaven has been waiting for us from the beginning, and now he waits for us there. Carlo's legacy continues to grow. His life is now taught in catechism classes, youth retreats, and schools. Bishops quote him. Youth groups study him. Web developers, artists, and digital creators look to him as a patron. Young people around the world are inspired by how Carlo blended holiness with modern life. His example proves that sanctity isn't about living in a monastery or avoiding technology. It's about bringing Christ into every moment online and offline. His Eucharistic miracles exhibit continues to travel the world. It has reached places like the Philippines, the United States, Argentina, and Kenya. Thousands who had once doubted the Eucharist have rediscovered their faith through it. In 2022, Pope Francis encouraged every diocese to present Carlo to the youth as a model. His story shows that sainthood isn't for the distant past, it's a calling for now. Antonia, Carlo's mother, continues to speak at parishes and conferences, sharing her son's message. She often says, Carlo didn't do extraordinary things. He did ordinary things with extraordinary love. In a world filled with distraction, Carlo reminds us that our greatest power is presence. Presence with God, presence with others, and presence with our mission. He lived just 15 years, but his flame continues to light the way for millions. And as his cause advances toward canonization, the Church is preparing to declare what the world already believes. Carlo Acutis was not just a good boy. He was a saint in sneakers. The death of Carlo Acutis marked the end of one short earthly journey, but it also ignited a flame that continues to illuminate lives across the globe. While his body was laid to rest in Assisi, his mission has traveled far beyond the borders of Italy. Through every screen, every exhibition, and every whispered prayer in a teenager's bedroom, Carlo's voice still speaks. Carlo had once said, "The internet is a gift from God, but it depends on how we use it." He saw digital platforms not as a distraction, but as a powerful highway for evangelization. In many ways, his life was a prophecy for the future of faith in the modern world. Where others saw screens as obstacles, Carlo saw opportunities. He anticipated what the Church would only later begin to fully grasp, that a digital apostolate was not optional. It was essential. To date, thousands of young Catholics run YouTube channels, create devotional apps, curate Catholic Instagram pages, and design websites rooted in evangelization, many crediting Carlo as their inspiration. Some say he gave them permission to be both tech-savvy and holy. Others say he reminded them that God could be found even in pixels and programming code. In dioceses across Europe and the Americas, youth leaders have incorporated Carlo's life into catechism curricula. Retreats are built around his quotes. Confirmation classes use his Eucharistic Miracles website as a discussion tool. He is no longer just a figure to admire, he is a peer, a mentor, a friend. Catholic artists have painted him with a hoodie and halo. Statues have been sculpted showing him smiling with a laptop under his arm. One church in Brazil even installed a stained glass window of Carlo beside traditional saints. In parishes from Nigeria to Poland, from South Korea to Australia, Carlo's message echoes loud and clear. Holiness is possible today. The beatification of Carlo Acutis in 2020 wasn't just a church event, it was a global celebration. Held in Assisi, the Mass drew tens of thousands of pilgrims, most of them young. As his incorrupt body was unveiled in a glass tomb, people wept. They prayed. They touched the glass, not to venerate a relic, but to connect with someone who felt like one of them. Pope Francis, in his apostolic exhortation Christus Vivit, singled out Carlo as a model for modern youth. He knew how to use the new communications technology to transmit the gospel, the Pope wrote. And indeed, Carlo wasn't just a digital native. He was a digital prophet. The miracle that led to his beatification, the healing of a Brazilian boy suffering from a rare pancreatic disease, was just the beginning. More cases are being documented. More prayers are being answered. Many believe that canonization is not a question of if but when. Carlo's story is also shaping conversations within the Vatican about the future of sainthood. What does a 21st century saint look like? How can the Church reach Gen Z and beyond? Carlo provides a living answer. He shows that sanctity is not about escaping technology, but sanctifying it. His canonization would make him the first millennial saint. This matters in a world where religion often feels distant and outdated to the younger generation. Carlo is a reminder that the call to holiness remains urgent, relevant, and beautifully possible. In recent years, many Catholic countries have launched Eucharistic revival movements. Faced with declining mass attendance and growing indifference toward the sacraments, bishops and priests are looking for ways to reignite the flame of devotion. And time and again, they turn to Carlo. His exhibition on Eucharistic miracles has become a key tool in this revival. Parishes host the display for a week. School groups tour it. Priests offer special adoration nights afterward. And slowly, something begins to shift. People kneel. People cry. People return to confession. Carlo's vision was always clear. If people knew what the Eucharist truly was, their lives would change. And that vision is coming to pass. There are countless stories of teens who saw his exhibition and decided to go to adoration for the first time. Adults who hadn't received communion in years suddenly felt compelled to return. In this way, Carlo is not just a saint in the making, he is a missionary. His mission is to restore belief in the Eucharist, to remind us that heaven touches earth at every Mass, that the divine presence is not far away, it is here, right now. Carlo often said that time is a gift, and we must not waste it. He was only 15 when he died, yet he achieved more in those years than many do in a lifetime. Why? Because he understood something most of us forget, that holiness is not about doing more, it's about loving more. He didn't rush through life. He lived it with intention, with prayer, with humor, with depth. He knew his purpose, and he chased it with joy. He believed that each of us has a unique mission from God. All people are born as originals, he once wrote, but many die as photocopies. The goal, he said, is to become the saint God intended you to be. Carlo believed in heaven, not as an abstract idea, but as a real place. Home. His favorite books included stories of saints and Marian apparitions. He loved Fatima. He wore a scapular. He consecrated himself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. As he lay dying, he told his mother not to fear. I will send you signs, he promised. I am going to heaven. And he did. And he has. Across the globe, youth movements, digital ministries, and campus fellowships are emerging with Blessed Carlo Acutis as their spiritual patron. In schools and universities, prayer groups now bear his name. In Nigeria, Brazil, and the Philippines, entire youth rallies have been organized around his story, his love for the Eucharist, and his call to holiness. These aren't dry events. They are vibrant. Teenagers gather with rosaries in their pockets and smartphones in their hands. There are praise nights with Eucharistic adoration, digital evangelization boot camps, and talks on moral courage. Carlo has become more than a symbol, he is a movement. In Italy, young pilgrims now walk a path called the Way of Carlo, retracing the sites where he grew in holiness, his home, his parish, the places where he served the poor, and the church where he made his first Holy Communion. Young people kneel where he knelt. They pray where he prayed. They take photos, yes, but they also carry home something invisible, a new conviction that they, too, are called to greatness. The Carlo Acutis Youth Mission in Argentina has distributed thousands of booklets about Eucharistic miracles. Their outreach includes confession drives, youth-led holy hours, and online faith formation. They meet virtually and in person, all bonded by a common dream to live radically for Jesus in a secular world. Even secular schools are beginning to notice. Some teachers, moved by the transformation they've seen in students, have quietly read his story and even shown clips of Carlo's beatification. Without saying a word, the example of one teenager is evangelizing teachers, principals, and parents. Carlo's influence isn't just limited to the youth. Many parents and grandparents have shared how his life gave them hope for their children. In an age where many families grieve over the loss of faith in their homes, Carlo stands as a light in the darkness. Antonia, his mother, often shares how her son's holiness pulled her back to Christ. She speaks at conferences about being a reluctant Catholic, someone who practiced religion out of obligation rather than love. And then, through Carlo's childlike devotion, everything changed. Now, thousands of parents tell similar stories. A father in Germany, once hardened against religion, watched his daughter cry while reading about Carlo's life. Moved, he went back to confession for the first time in 25 years. A single mother in Colombia, desperate to reconnect with her son, used Carlo's story as a bridge. They now attend Mass together. His story reminds families that God can work through the smallest gestures: a child's curiosity, a teen's hidden prayer life, a shared Eucharistic adoration moment. In a culture that celebrates rebellion, Carlo shows that obedience to God is the ultimate form of freedom. What happens when a saint walks among the hashtags? When holiness is painted in pixels and memes? A phenomenon. Artists across platforms have reimagined Carlo Acutis in modern ways, as a comic book character, in digital paintings, in music videos, and even in short TikTok homilies. In one popular animation, Carlo is shown holding a laptop that glows with Eucharistic light, while devils flee from behind screens. In another, his hoodie becomes a symbol of sanctity in the 21st century. Contemporary musicians have written songs about him, mixing techno beats with sacred chants, reminding us that sanctity doesn't have to sound like Gregorian, only it can drop with bass and still raise the soul. In the Catholic fashion world, Carlo's hoodie has become iconic. Some Catholic brands now sell hoodies with quotes like, "I'm with Jesus," or "Highway to Heaven," inspired directly by Carlo's writings. His story has also been featured in documentaries and short films. A Netflix-style documentary in development is expected to feature not only his life story but also interviews with those healed through his intercession. Since his beatification, Assisi has become a magnet for pilgrims not only to visit the tomb of Saint Francis but to kneel before the incorrupt body of blessed Carlo Acutis. His glass tomb, located in the sanctuary of the Spoliation, has become a place of quiet tears, whispered prayers, and visible conversions. People from every walk of life gather here. Children place digital drawings on the tomb. Programmers leave behind USB drives and handwritten notes. Priests come to ask for revival in their parishes. Parents come to ask for healing in their homes. And they leave changed. A special path through Assisi now connects the life of Saint Francis to the life of blessed Carlo. Pilgrims walk these cobblestones, reflecting on how two young men, born centuries apart, both gave everything for God in their youth. Elsewhere, Carlo's relics have traveled. In Mexico, one cathedral drew over 70,000 people in 3 days when hosting his relics. Miracles, confessions, and vocations followed. His spiritual footprint is as real as it is global. One surprising fruit of Carlo's legacy is the rise in religious vocations linked to his story. In seminaries, young men have testified that his courage gave them the final push to say yes to God. If Carlo could live a full life in just 15 years, one seminarian wrote, "Then I can give my life fully too." Young women entering religious life speak of Carlo with affection and inspiration. For some, it was his gentle love for Mary. For others, it was his clarity about the Eucharist. Either way, vocations are blooming in his wake, and this has a ripple effect. As vocations rise, so do priests who cite him in homilies. Bishops quote him in pastoral letters. Even the Vatican has said he could become the patron of all digital evangelists and students. Carlo once said, "Always be united to Jesus. That is my life plan." Simple words, but behind them lies a dream for the world. A world where Eucharistic adoration becomes as normal as social media scrolling. A world where children read about saints who wear sneakers. A world where holiness is not feared or mocked but desired. A world where teenagers aren't pressured to conform but empowered to stand apart. A a world where the church embraces innovation without losing truth. This is the world Carlo longed for, and in many ways, it's beginning to emerge. Parents now ask for catechisms that include his name. Catholic schools start every school year with a Carlo Acutis Day. Even non-Catholics are drawn to his story, his joy, his discipline, his sacrifice. In a divided world, he unites. In a distracted world, he focuses. In a wounded world, he heals. Carlo Acutis lived only 15 years, but his mission is now in the hands of millions. He was a torch, and that flame now rests with us. If you use social media, ask yourself, what would Carlo post? If you are young, ask yourself, what am I doing with my time? If you are a parent, ask, how can I nurture holiness in my home? If you feel unworthy, remember, Carlo had struggles too, but he never let them define him. The world needs saints who know how to code, saints who understand memes, saints who can live stream holiness. Carlo showed us the blueprint. And so we say, blessed Carlo Acutis, pray for us. Guide us in this digital age. Make us originals. Make us holy.